Coming up, special elections to replace a DC council member who is expelled for corruption, a massive social housing win in Seattle, commentary on the state of the bureaucratic coup, and how you can join the socialist fight. But first, DC housing justice advocates fight to stave off Mayor Bowser's assault on TOPA, the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. TOPA is under threat. Our organizers in the Stomp Out Slumlords campaign have been on top of this. Jump to the events segment for more on what they're up to. We've also been following reporting by Sam P.K. Collins of the Washington Informer and Alex Kona of the Washington City Paper. Here's the context. Mayor Bowser has introduced legislation called the Rental Act, or the Rebalancing Expectations for Neighbors, Tenants, and Landlords Act, which is supposed to reinvigorate the local housing market. How? The act would make legislation that passed the council last fall permanent. Collins' article does a deep dive into what that would mean in terms of evictions and emergency rental assistance, but for now, I'm going to focus on one issue of the bill, and that's the rolling back of TOPA. TOPA gives renters the right to buy their homes when a building goes up for sale, or choose their next landlord. This is the only law like it in the country, and its passage in 1980 was a hard-fought organizing win. The Rental Act is aiming to gut TOPA. It would narrow its scope such that tenants of most market-rate housing would not be covered. It'll also exclude residents of affordable housing buildings that have 5 or more years left on their affordability covenants. The mayor's basically saying that the only people who should benefit from TOPA are those in rent-controlled buildings occupied by families making between 51 and 80% of the median family income. This flies in the face of the purpose of TOPA, which is to empower tenants to come together and organize for their housing conditions. Developers have been gunning for TOPA for years. They successfully carved out single-family homes in 2018 and large swaths of new properties downtown in 2023. With this bill, Bowser is trying to give her developer friends all they've ever wanted, a total destruction of TOPA. In other news, DC is about to enter election season again. Hopefully, this go-round it'll make for some better TV. The DC Council's Ward 8 member, Trayon White, was expelled unanimously by his fellow council members a little over 2 weeks ago, after he was indicted by the FBI for bribery. You can read more about White's run-in with the law in our Web Weekly Update archives, but for now, know that special elections have been called for July 15th. White has a seriously loyal base of supporters, but the pending bribery charges against him could cause some problems. What might help, though, is his naked attempt to cozy up to Trump by lauding his cabinet pick, Kash Patel, from inside the Senate confirmation hearing. Embarrassing. Speaking of local politics, let's talk about Shayla. When a vacancy emerged on the Prince George's County Council, current Board of Education Representative Shayla Adams Stafford stepped up to run as the left-wing progressive candidate. Now, this race is consequential for Maryland's PG County because the council is currently split between progressive and centrist Dems, who are very sympathetic to landlords and developers. Shayla winning would mean swinging the balance in favor of the left. DSA members have been canvassing, and let me say, in some truly brutal winter conditions, around the county every Saturday and Sunday for the last few months. We are feeling great about Shayla's chances. Now an update on social housing in the U.S. Last week, Seattle voters approved an insanely cool and historic measure to fund social housing in the city. The ballot measure passed will allocate funding to the city's social housing department through an excessive compensation tax on certain corporations. This comes after voters approved an earlier ballot measure that actually created the social housing program. Now, what does the department actually do? It creates publicly owned, permanently affordable, mixed-income housing in the city. It meets strong environmental standards and will be partially renter-run. In other words, it's a huge win for housing and climate justice. The MDC DSA chapter's Social Housing Working Group has been following the news closely, and you won't be surprised to learn that Seattle DSA was a major part of the coalition that organized for both ballot measures. The MDC Social Housing Working Group meets on March 9th. Join us and let's make shit happen in the DMV. If you're looking for DSA action in the DMV area, this Sunday, February 23rd at 2 p.m., we'll host our bi-monthly general body meeting, virtually and in person. All are welcome to join the meeting and the happy hour that will follow. Also happening this Sunday is a wheat pasting event for Rockville rent stabilization. Next, we've got a meeting by the New Magazine Essays Discussion Club on Monday, February 24th. For those of you fired up to protect TOPA, don't miss the Stomp Out Slumlord All Hands meeting. That's this Thursday, March 6th at 6 p.m. And an anti-eviction canvass set for Saturday, March 1st. With everything going on, it's easy to feel hopeless and overwhelmed. The best response is solidarity. Join us for the Metro DC Campaign Fair at 6:30 p.m. Wednesday, February 26th at the MLK Library in DC. We'll provide an overview of how Metro DC DSA operates and feature opportunities to speak directly to people who run our campaigns. For more information, you can email member-engagement at mdcdsa.org. There are tons of ways to get plugged into left organizing and culture in the next few days. The Federal Unionist Network, or FUN, is holding a happy hour fundraiser for federal workers at Lyman's Tavern from 7 to 11 p.m. This is a great way to support illegally ousted federal workers, of which there is no shortage in our communities. The Park East Co-op Project is hosting a walking tour on the history of tenant organizing and co-ops in Adams Morgan on Saturday. On Sunday, WAPA-DC, an organization that celebrates Colombian culture in the district, is hosting Sunday Bites from Colombia to Palestine at Chacho Spirits from 12 to 5 p.m. There'll be traditional food, music, art, solidarity, and simply a good time. Finally, on Monday, the DC for Palestine Coalition is hosting a community meeting in Adams Morgan from 7 to 9 p.m. DC for Palestine is providing food and rolling out their new campaign, Apartheid Free DC. For all of these events, find more info in our written update on the web and email in the description. Our newsletter has a section dedicated to essential perspectives in the current week's media cycle. One that I'd like to highlight is an analysis of the ongoing shitstorm led by fascist-in-chief Donald Trump and his number one confidant, Elon Musk. The article is called In the Face of Overwhelm, and it's by Asha Ransby-Sporn, published in These Times. This feels especially relevant as someone living in the DC metro area and constantly surrounded by news of tyrannical takeovers over the last few weeks. I wanted to take a second to go over some of the main points and interesting quotes by Ransby-Sporn. First, Project 2025 was not developed yesterday, last year, or even under the first Trump term. It's a product of a decades-long undertaking of the right-wing sickos and capitalists in this country. Their aim is to hollow out any of the good parts of our government that provide things to the people and make more room for unfettered pursuit of capital. Ransby-Sporn cites the Koch brothers and Joseph Coors, the now deceased baron of like every major beer brand ever, as funders of Project 2025. They and their old money families have been fighting for this deregulation for decades. Second, people are feeling hopeless, yes, but we shouldn't give in to our pessimism. The article talks about how people aren't apathetic, but rather they've opened their eyes to capital-driven systems of governance that make change so damn hard. But that doesn't mean we don't have a resistance base. We just need to make this base believe that we can change things. The third act of the article lays out a bit of a vision for actually doing that, actually making people believe in our ability to win a better future, free from the reign of capitalist oligarchs like Trump and Musk. She doesn't lay out a step-by-step guide, but she does include some parameters for a worldview that can appeal to the masses and compete with what she describes as the dominant, individualist, free market populism. Storytelling will be important, tying together a better world with public institutions that actually provide for people and are held accountable. Audience is important too. We need to be talking to people outside our like-minded communities and taking advantage of large-scale media messaging. And, above all, we need to be flexible in meeting the moment, in terms of tactics, issues, and coalition building. We are all active political actors, and we're able to fight back. DSA really showed that this week when we showed up big to the Save Our Services Day of Action. You can learn more about that in the full update. The Democratic Socialists of America is growing. If you're not a member of DSA and would like to connect with other like-minded activists, community organizers, and neighbors, visit dsausa.org and join today. Metro DC DSA is the third largest chapter in America with over 2,000 members. We're very active in the community and have groups focused on labor, tenants' rights, LGBTQ rights, environmental activism, and more. DSA is the largest socialist organization in America, and we'd love to have you as a member. These and other stories, along with the links and sources, can be found in the Metro DC DSA Weekly Update newsletter, which you can find linked in the description. This production has been a collaboration of members of Metro DC DSA. Look for videos on the first and third Friday of every month. I'm your host, Tony. A better world is possible.